If you're tired of swiping endlessly on dating apps and feeling like you're getting nowhere, you're going to love this episode. Hi, it's Alicia, your friendly non-monogamous relationship coach. Welcome to Nope, We're Not Monogamous. So I'm chatting with Rozie Erlewine, a compassionate matchmaker and a relationship nerd who's been organizing in the Seattle polyamory scene since like 2017. She's the founder of Seattle Inclusive Matchmaking and hosts polyamorous speed dating events. Yes, that's a thing. And it sounds amazing. Rozie and I talked about everything from how poly speed dating is bringing people together to the importance of slowing down and dating with intention. And we dig into some big stuff like dealing with jealousy and finding your values in your relationships, and why dating apps can feel so freaking frustrating and what to do instead, and how to build connections that go beyond the surface, and what it really means to work on yourself before diving into new relationships. Rozie is all about spreading good vibes and helping people find happiness in their connections. So whether you're new to polyamory, curious about matchmaking, or just trying to figure out your next steps, this episode's full of tips and insights to inspire you. Don't forget to rate and review the podcast if you're loving these conversations, if you're getting anything out of them. It really helps us reach more people, helps us keep the dialogue open. So I hope you enjoy. Let's go. Well, first of all, thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, of course.
And being patient with me and all my
Yeah.
tech issues.
Happens to the best of us.
Right. Okay. I want to ask you a whole bunch about speed dating and match. Well, first of all, okay. So I have seen your posts in the Seattle, I don't remember, one of the Seattle polyamory groups. And I was like, that sounds so cool. And so I reached out to you and was like, come on the show. But I want to ask you about what your relationship style is, like polyamory, non-monogamy. What does that look like for you?
Yeah, I'm polyamorous. I started approaching polyamory in 2017 as a single person, and that's really informed a lot of how I relate to people. So my style is a bit more on the non-hierarchical side, with tastes of solo poly as well.
Nice. Amazing. And so were you um had you been in monogamous relationships prior to that, or did it just come naturally for you?
Yeah, I was in monogamous relationships for my whole life until that point, till I was in my mid-20s. And I realized that it wasn't a great fit for me. And I had just grown up thinking that monogamy was the only option.
Right. Yeah. As most of us do. So how did you get into polyamorous matchmaking?
Yeah, it's something that I've seen people asking for. So I run a Discord server for poly people in the Seattle area, and a lot of people are just sick of the apps, which I
Mhm.
totally understand. I deactivated mine a couple months ago, and I hope I don't ever have to get back on there. Um, so people in the Discord were saying, "Oh, we want a matchmaker," and I was like, "Oh, I've always kind of wanted to do that. I've always been really interested in people and relationships and communication and all of that." I was an anthropology major in college, and took some psychology classes to go along with that. Uh, so yeah, it just made sense to me. Um,
Yeah.
I left my job in July. That was sort of my security blanket, my full-time salary job. And I have been trying to figure out what to do. It's a rough job market out there.
Yeah.
And yeah, I found it to be super rewarding so far.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
amazing. I love that. I love that so much. And so part of that, you're running speed dating events, right? What does that look like?
Yeah, I've put on one so far. and it had a capacity of 26 people. 17 people showed up. I rented out a small brewery in Greenwood, and yeah, we had the whole place to ourselves. It was just really fun. I had people set up to rotate through the different tables at the brewery and make as many matches as possible in the amount of time that we had.
That
Yeah.
sounds like a blast. Like
Yeah.
genuinely, that sounds really cool. Was there anything that like surprised you?
Um, People were just really lively and excited about it, which I found surprising. The way I had it set up was sort of with a queer focus, and so I didn't have just like men meeting women. I don't think
Mm-hmm.
that model works super well in Seattle anyway. A lot of people
Right.
are some flavor of queer or non-binary, and so like, how would you even set
Yeah.
that up? And a lot of people are like bi or pansexual too, so you can't even just like categorize it in terms of like heterosexual norms. Uh,
Right.
yeah, but even like people who weren't necessarily the people who would date each other were still like having a great time and talking and using up the whole 5 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's so cool. I imagine it's like even just trying to like make friends as an adult is really hard, right? And then to
yeah,
like make friends that like have, a similar type of life, right? Are making similar like relationship choices or having similar relationship styles and like building community in that way. That sounds like such a like really fun opportunity.
yeah. It is really hard to make friends, and that is something that I offer as matchmaking. And then as part of the speed dating event, I really had people focus on the community building aspect of it. And, I was saying you might not necessarily have a romantic connection with someone, but maybe there's someone who would bring you soup when you were sick, or who would walk your dog when you're on vacation or something.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's one of my favorite things about polyamory is like having having a like a network of people who you can like relate to in multiple ways. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, yeah. What how I'm curious how you navigate matchmaking for people that have like like we use this word polyamory, but like there's people have so many different ideas of what that means and so many different ways that they relate to each other. So I'm curious, how do you navigate that? People have different like preferences and relationship styles and trying to match them up.
Yeah, that's like the fun part because everyone's looking for something different. And so you want to try and find people who are looking for the same situation. So the first thing I ask people when I'm talking to them after their name pronouns is, what are you looking for in a matchmaker? Like, what can I help you with? And sometimes it's people they're looking for someone who wants to have a child with them. And sometimes it's people who want a nesting partner who doesn't want children. And, sometimes it might be like three different things that they're open to. They're looking for something more casual, and then they're looking for like a nesting partner. Um, so really just asking questions. And then
Yeah,
I have a pretty involved spreadsheet system that I get into where I just sort of systematically go through and ask people questions, and then that I can use to help make the matches.
that's amazing. That sounds better. That it's a human driven algorithm. Much better than
Yeah,
the apps.
yeah. Yeah, I'm really passionate about it at this point, honestly, like getting people off of the apps and kind of just taking a slower and more intentional approach to dating. Swiping on apps is so addicting, and
Mhm.
I think it's really doing people a disservice.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I agree. I agree. I in the last year I started working with a startup um for a love app called Elixir. And originally we were thinking dating app and then we were like, God, no, it's insane and toxic. And so we actually moved towards coaching and educating people on their we're on getting clear on what they want, what they desire, what their boundaries
Mm-hmm.
are, how to heal all of our like internal relationship wounding, and get really good with yourself as you're like dating and navigating relationships and all the different relationship styles. Because the dating app thing is kind of, it's traumatizing, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really frustrating system to navigate, like regardless of your gender, or your appearance or anything. There's always downsides to those dating apps. But
Yeah.
that's cool. Like, so you guys are doing coaching. Um,
Yeah.
what
Yeah,
else?
like self-love coaching, dating coaching, relationship coaching, and like education. And what's the other word I was looking for? Um like workshops. Like workshops around things like how to like walk away from a date that wasn't great and still feel good about yourself, right?
Yeah.
Like things that we just don't, especially over the last 5-6 years, haven't had a lot of practice with. Right. Dating's been rough.
Yeah, it really has been. Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm. What how I'm curious, how would you mm, how has the like polyamory scene, community, culture in Seattle or in the area changed since you started engaging with it in 2017, I think you said?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I can only explain things from my perspective, but when I
Totally.
first started, I went to like group meetings for poly people, and I was one of the youngest people there by like 10 to 20 years,
Mhm.
which was very intimidating. But there was a very apparently like thriving community of people, and they're like mid to late 30s, 40s, 50s, who were holding a lot of intentional discussions as a community. And I think it was like twice monthly that you could go. Um, and those were people who had been poly for a long time, mostly.
Yeah.
Now, what I see is a lot of people who are married opening up their relationships. Like that's a huge trend right now.
Oh yeah.
And then you also have people who are much younger, like Gen Z, coming in who are just familiar with poly as a default.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yeah, like why doesn't everybody do this?
Yeah, but
What do you mean you
not
only get to pick
being,
one flavor?
yeah, exactly. But being a millennial and being raised in a very conservative environment, um, I'm not really sure what the Gen Z scene is in Seattle for dating and
Sure.
polyamory.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I met my husband in 2014, and we've never been monogamous together. Like I met him and I was like, I had just gotten divorced. I was like, I'm never going to be monogamous again. But you're cool. And he was like, dope, I'm polyamorous. And I was like, I don't know, that sounds weird. And 10
Yeah.
years later, here I am.
Now you're an
I was
expert.
like, I just want to be slutty. I don't know what you're talking about. And and then we fell in love, and I had to figure out how to deal with my jealousy, my insecurity, and all the monogamous conditioning. And
Yeah, it's
um
real.
yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. What would you say is, I know I'm going to ask you a different question. What would you say is the most misunderstood, or yeah, the misunderstood aspect of polyamorous relationships by people outside of polyamory?
The first thing that comes to mind for me is people thinking that you can't have a serious relationship if you're polyamorous, that you're just dating around and you can't form
Uh-huh.
a lifelong commitment, and you don't really love the other person if you're not going to commit to them in a monogamous way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 I see that a lot. And then the flip side of that is people who are non-monogamous or polyamorous have that belief kind of buried real deep. Like I know that it's possible, but what if it's not? And like trying to like I know I can love multiple people and have multiple long-term relationships and but what if? What if those people were right?
Oof.
Uh-huh. 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 Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. What's been the biggest challenge for you being polyamorous?
Finding people who want the same thing as me. Um, so I haven't wanted a very hierarchical relationship. I'm not really comfortable with having a partner who feels entitled to like make decisions for me.
Here,
Um,
here.
and I know that not all hierarchy looks that way, but it's definitely something that you can deal with. And I also, at the same time, want a level of commitment. And so finding
Mhm.
that middle ground has been really tricky.
Yeah,
Because a lot of people who are open to dating solo poly are like staunchly against um, basic levels of commitment. Um, and I want someone who I can rely on,
yeah,
to like if I have to have surgery, like they'll take care of me for the 6 weeks after the surgery.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
yeah. Or, in a
yeah.
crisis, like we can be together.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just thinking like the example that always comes to mind for me is like when I break down, my car breaks down on the side of the road, who do I call? Especially when I'm like, oh fuck, what like I can't think, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I have a partner who um is married, but still shows up for me in very important ways. And I
Yeah.
did end up in the ER this June, and I didn't even ask. I just told him I was in the ER, and he was like, "I'll be right there."
Yeah.
And came over and hung out with me until I got out, you
Yeah.
know?
That's so good. Yeah. It's almost it seems like that should almost be a given. Like there's a level of community care that needs to happen in relationships that we've kind of culturally gotten away from. Like if it's not your spouse or like your one main partner, then we don't do anything. However, if it was like our best friend, we would. So there's something like where the romance is involved that suddenly creates a barrier to
Mm,
something we would otherwise do for like a close friend or a family member or our spouse,
yeah.
right? But then but like I see it a lot, like in polyamorous relationships, non-monogamous relationships, something there with like if because there's romance involved, suddenly there has to be like a wall, like and it's really weird and I want to see it change. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like you're not seeing your romantic partner as a whole person at that point if you're not willing to show up for them when they need you.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Like like I always anytime I'm and I give this advice to my clients a lot, but anytime I'm feeling conflicted about like what should I do, what's the right thing to do here, I always try and take the romance out of the equation. Like, okay, if this is my friend, right? This is my best friend of 7
Mm,
years that I hang out with all the time and they're having an emergency, how would I show up for them? What would I do? How would the other people in my life respond? Versus because this is my partner. Yeah, like it helps me go, what is the right thing to do and make decisions when I pull the romance part out because we're like so conditioned around what it means, like love and whatnot. Yeah.
wow, yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good way of looking at it. Yeah.
It helps like, I don't know, it helps take the weirdness out of it. Right. I'm like, if this is my friend, Well, then the answer seems really obvious. But when I say this is like one of my three partners, how will this partner feel, and how will that partner feel, and what will, it takes the weirdness out. I'm
Mhm.
able to get clarity.
Yeah.
um I always like to ask people about jealousy. What is your what's your experience with jealousy?
Jealousy is really interesting. There's a lot of advice out there, and I think it can really just depend. I think a lot of the advice is bad.
Mm-hmm.
Um, uh, and you really have to look at your own situation. But for me, lately, when felt jealousy, it's when I'm feeling less secure in my relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And so the the answer is, what can I do to feel more secure in my relationship?
Yeah.
And it's okay to feel jealous sometimes, but it shouldn't be like ruling your decision making.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 Anytime that I've been jealous to the point of it feeling to where it's like hijacks all my thoughts, right? Then I'm like, okay, there's something I need to do here that's a me problem probably. And when it's, you know, I go like, is there actually something bad happening to me, or am I feeling like insecure or something? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, you can play the and then what game, like, oh, I'm jealous that this person is with this person all the time. Well, then what will happen? And then what will happen? And I think I learned that from like Polyamory Weekly or something. But if you
Uh-huh.
get to the point where you're like, I will die alone in a ditch, realistically, like that's probably not gonna happen.
You probably have some better choices you can make before you get there.
Hmm. Yeah.
That was my very first polyamory podcast that I started listening to, and I listened to it for a very long time. I loved it. And that was, yeah,
Yeah.
that's the one.
I was sad when they stopped making things.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
They still have
Um,
really good advice out there, so that's good.
yeah, it's there for future generations.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Is there anything that I haven't asked you that you want to share with the listeners?
Good question. Man, I want people to take your coaching class and then come be my clients.
Right? Let's get your shit together and then get you matched up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's really interesting working with people. I feel like I've made some really good connections, and part of my goal is to just help people be happy, just like spread good feelings around.
Yeah.
And I feel like I've been pretty successful in that, but a lot of it depends on the people who I'm matching being in a good place for that.
Mm-hmm.
And a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people have a lot of trauma that should definitely be addressed before they get to me, ideally.
Yeah.
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 And some of that, like relationships can be healing as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, But if you're at a point in your relationships where you're like constantly in conflict and relationships don't feel good, um, hopefully you're getting outside support for that.
Yeah. 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 It's really, really important. And there's an aspect of like, there's some things you can't work on if you aren't in them, right? Like a lot of people come to me to work on jealousy, and then something happens or they change things that, and jealousy just isn't popping up. And so it's like, well, in theory, like I've got this down in theory, but until you actually have to put it into practice, it's just a theory. You don't know how your nervous system is going to react until you're actually in the feels of it, which is, it's like, so doing some of the work for yourself, and then when you're in relationships you have to keep doing the work so that as challenges come up, as things get triggered or activated, then you have the capacity to work on those in a way that doesn't leave you shutting down or running away or constantly fighting.
Yeah. And I just had a thought that occurred to me concerning jealousy. It's really important to have your internal values straight and how you want to show up in a relationship. And again, that comes from self-work and getting external support sometimes. So if you're experiencing jealousy, you can think like, how does this align with my values and how I'm showing up?
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yeah. Like
Yeah,
what's your North Star? What is your
yeah,
guiding light in making your decisions in relationships? And for most people, they don't know what that is other than I don't want to be left. I don't want to be abandoned, or I don't want to lose love and connection. And that's probably the worst one, because then we just
yeah,
abandon ourselves and accept things that aren't good for us. Nobody wants that.
yeah, yeah. I really like the analogy, or just like the saying, like if you love them, let them go. And the
Mhm.
thing about polyamory is that if you give people the chance, they'll come back to you time and time and time again, and that can really strengthen your relationship, and it enriches all of our lives.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Um, how can people find Seattle Inclusive Matchmaking?
Right now, the best way is Facebook.
Yeah.
So just look for Seattle Polyamory Matchmaking and Speed Dating on Facebook. And the next best way, if you don't have Facebook, is to shoot me an email. I have very affordable rates, especially when you consider that most matchmakers charge thousands of dollars. Um, I have like an initial consult fee and then a monthly fee after that, and everything is sliding scale. Um,
Nice.
yeah, I'm really excited to talk to people. Maybe we can put my email in the show notes so that
Uh-huh.
people can click through to that if they need to.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely. Amazing. I love it. So good. I feel like there was something else I wanted to say. Well, it's lost. So I will. I'll put your information in the show notes so people can find you. And I've enjoyed talking to you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for coming on.
yeah. Thanks so much for reaching out to me, sort of out of the blue, and trusting me. I listened to some of your podcast episodes, and I thought it was great, and so I'm really excited to be here.
Yay. Good. Good, good, good. Thank you.
Yeah.